Welcome everyone to the Process of Content Analysis lecture video. Let's get started. Content analysis is a popular form of qualitative data analysis. Content analysis can be part of a grounded theory approach using an inductive method where the researcher starts with the data and works their way up to generalizing a theory. But content analysis can also be done in a deductive manner. This coding process works a little differently than the inductive process because coding is treated like a survey instrument and operationalized prior to beginning data collection. Traditionally, deductive content analysis includes two different types of codes. Manifest codes are called surface level coding. This type of data analysis involves simple counting of things or instances. For example, let's say you're interested in measuring violence in a movie. You may ask how many people in a movie engage in physical violence, like punching, kicking, pushing, etc. Or maybe you're interested in how many times the character uses a gun. Both of these give you a numerical answer, like in this show, they used a gun 3 times, which means the movie is classified as having a high level of violence. The advantage of manifest coding is that it can be done very quickly, and it's usually pretty reliable. As long as all of us have the same conceptual definition, we should be able to document the same number of instances for each concept. The primary disadvantage of manifest coding is that you reduce internal validity because you're simply counting. Maybe the gun was displayed because someone was threatening another character, so the gun was used not as a measure of violence, but as protection. Manifest coding does not allow you to take into account the contextual information very well. The other type of coding is called latent coding. Latent coding looks below the surface of the document to see what is happening at a deeper level. Latent coding does not require simple numbers. Instead, it uses qualitative notes that are similar to those developed during grounded theory. For example, again, going back to measuring violence in a movie, you could document the entire sequence of a gun being produced, including the reasoning behind it, the context of the gun draw, the outcome of the event, etc. From this, you can then infer something about the messages contained in the movie and make a determination about whether or not it is violent. Using this manifest coding, this picture would count as one gun. But maybe you don't classify this as violence in the same manner using latent coding because it's done in self-defense. That's up to the researcher and the specific research question. But that's why latent coding can provide the research study with much richer internal validity because we can more accurately measure what we're trying to measure. On the other hand, reliability goes down with latent coding because moving beyond simple counting creates more subjective data analysis. And since observations differ between people, we're more likely to come up with different answers. Content analysis requires that the researcher pay particular attention to sampling procedures. If we're interested in violence in movies, there are billions of movies out there, right? It's impractical for us to watch every movie that ever existed. So we need to figure out how to sample from a smaller pool of movies. So the question becomes, how do you decide on what movie? If you use probability sampling to select the movies, what will your sampling frame consist of? Are you only going to look at movies made after 2000, or maybe only movies that are described as action movies? You also have to consider the content itself and how much you'll be analyzing. For example, a traditional movie is an hour and a half long. A sample of 10 movies, therefore, creates 15 hours of video for you to watch. With content analysis, we have the option to do a more limited analysis of the sample. So maybe instead of watching the whole movie, we just watch the first 15 minutes. Or maybe we choose 15 minutes at random from the film. Maybe we don't even watch the film at all, but we analyze the film synopsis on IMDb. The images on this slide, for example, show an analysis that was conducted on the movie posters, another option. There are a whole host of different scenarios, and it's important for the researcher to document all of these decisions and provide justification. Here's an example of a deductive content analysis that uses both latent and manifest coding. The researcher wanted to examine how sexual violence cases were depicted in the media during the height of the Me Too movement. The author noted that the media articles are important to study because of their impact on public policy. In this graphic, the author explains how editorials, op-ed publications, feature articles, and media statements have an impact on the social approval or disapproval of social norms regarding sexual assault, and that in turn influences the way society perceives sexual assault behaviors and the way they respond to those behaviors. For their analysis, the authors decided to focus on 3 high-profile cases that emerged during the Me Too movement: the Bill Cosby case, the Brock Turner case, and the Weinstein allegations. All of the articles related to these three cases were gathered from newspaper articles published in the Washington Post and the New York Times between 2014 and 2018. In the manuscript, the author provides justification for all of these decisions, including the focus on the three cases, the two selected newspapers, and the time period that they chose for analysis. The authors used both manifest and latent coding methods, so they used simple word counts and went beyond individual words to focus on context and meaning. Here is one set of variables that were coded using a manifest coding method. The author defined several different categories of interest and then coded the number of times each of the associated keywords was identified. So for instance, the person who experienced the sexual violence could be called a victim or a survivor. In the 195 articles analyzed, the author found that the word victim was much more prevalent, being used 175 times total, whereas survivor was only used 18 times. Remember that latent coding, though, requires a much more in-depth look at the material, looking beyond the text itself into the broader context. Here is another table excerpt from the manuscript showing the author's process of analysis for several latent themes. For example, beyond specific words like victim or survivor, the author was also looking for ways in which the victim was depicted. Was there information within the text that would cause the reader to sympathize or empathize with the victim? Was there language that conveyed the power differences between the victim and the assailant, or descriptions of the long-term impacts of these actions for the victims? On the flip side, was there language that conveyed sympathy or damages to the perpetrator, like this discussion about Bill Cosby's canceled projects and his standing ovation in Florida? These type of descriptors can change the way people view the individuals involved in the sexual assault case. In the manuscript body, the author explained the different categorizations she used and then provided specific examples highlighting the coding system. This is so important with qualitative research because there's a level of subjectivity here that isn't always present in quantitative data analysis. So by showing examples, quotes, etc., you can let your reader better understand the process by which you came to your conclusions. And like anything with the peer review system, your reviewers can disagree with you or agree with your justification. It all depends on the process. All right, well, that concludes our discussion about content analysis. Thanks for watching, everyone.